twin sons of Quintanis burned like dying embers through the smoke-choked sky, their light fractured by the skeletal remains of hive spires that once scraped heaven's vault. Across the scorched wasteland of what had been the agricultural district, the stench of Prometheum fires mixed with the copper tang of blood and the acrid bite of lasgun discharge. Somewhere beneath the rubble of Manufacturum, 740,000 Imperial citizens huddled in darkness, their prayers to the Emperor lost beneath the thunderous laughter of green-skin war cries. Sergeant Hadrian of the 47th Quintanis Guard crouched behind the twisted metal of a Chimera transport, its hull split open like a rotten fruit. His lasgun's power pack clicked as he slapped in his third-to-last charge. Around him, what remained of his platoon checked their weapons with the mechanical precision of men who had learned that survival measured itself in ammunition counts and firing lanes. The Orcs had broken through the outer perimeter 3 hours before dawn. By the Emperor's grace, they had held the inner ring, but grace was running thin. "Movement 200 mem," whispered Corporal Vex, her scope trained on the rubble field ahead. "Big bastard with a shooter, and he's got friends." Hadrian squinted through the dust haze. The Orc war party numbered at least 30, their crude weapons glinting in the hellish light. Behind them, a battle wagon's engine roared like a caged beast, its spiked ram ready to scatter what remained of the guard's position. The civilians below depended on this thin line of Imperial steel and flesh. There would be no retreat. "Throne! Damn it!" he muttered, raising his last pistol to signal the advance. The words died on his lips as something impossible stepped from the smoke ahead. The figure moved with a fluidity that spoke of perfect biomechanical harmony, its olive-green armour catching the light in ways that suggested technologies beyond Imperial doctrine. Nearly 8F tall, it carried a weapon that hummed with barely contained power, its design clean and functional in a way that made guard equipment seem crude by comparison. The helmet turned toward Hadrian's position, and though no expression was visible through the golden visor, the sergeant felt himself being evaluated by an intelligence vast and calculating. The Orcs saw it too. Their war cries shifted from bloodthirsty joy to confused aggression as they registered this new factor in their simple equation of violence. The largest among them, a knob whose scarred hide bore the trophies of a dozen campaigns, raised his slugger and bellowed a challenge in his brutal tongue. The armoured figure's response came not in words but in motion. The weapon in his hand spoke once, a sharp crack that sent a projectile through the knob's skull with surgical precision. Before the beast's body struck the ground, the figure had moved, his armour's servo motors singing a quiet hymn of perfectly calibrated movement. A grenade flew from his left hand, its arc calculated to scatter the war party's formation, while his right hand worked the weapon's action with mechanical perfection. The explosion threw 3 Orcs into the air, their crude armour no match for military-grade ordnance. The survivors charged, their primitive minds unable to process tactics beyond overwhelming their enemy through sheer brutality. It was exactly what the armoured warrior had anticipated. He moved through them like death-given form, each shot finding its mark with inhuman precision. A burst caught an Orc boy in the chest, the rounds punching through salvaged metal plate to find flesh beneath. The warrior sidestepped a crude axe swing, his left hand coming up to break the attacker's wrist with a sound like snapping timber. His weapon's muzzle pressed against green flesh, and thunder spoke again. Hadrian watched in stunned silence as the impossible warrior carved through the Orc war party with an efficiency that bordered on the divine. Each movement flowed into the next with perfect economy. No energy wasted, no opportunity missed. When the last green skin fell, twitching in the rubble, the figure turned toward the guard position and began walking forward. "Hold fire," Hadrian commanded, though his men had already lowered their weapons in unconscious recognition of a superior force. The warrior approached with his hands visible, the strange weapon held in a non-threatening position. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority, tempered by something Hadrian had never heard from an Astartes, genuine concern for mortal life. "Sergeant, I need a tactical assessment. How many civilians are trapped below and what's their condition?" The words were spoken in perfect Logo-Gothic, but the accent was unlike anything in Imperial records. Hadrian found his voice after a moment of struggle. 40,000 souls, my lord. Food and water for maybe 2 days. Medical supplies exhausted. We've held this position for 18 hours, but the Greenkins keep coming. The helmet turned toward the ruined Manufacturum, and Hadrian could almost feel the warrior's mind working through the tactical implications. What Imperial forces are available for extraction? The 15th Armoured is pinned down at Hive Turs, my lord. Naval support promised, but Hadrian shrugged, the gesture saying everything about Imperial logistics that words could not. Understood. The warrior's helmet turned back toward the Orc lines where fresh movement suggested another attack was forming. I'll establish a defensive perimeter. Your men need to focus on civilian evacuation routes. There's a drainage system beneath the old Agra complex that should connect to the Underhive. Hadrian blinked. The tactical assessment was flawless, delivered without consultation of data slates or OPEX readings. More unsettling was the assumption that Imperial Guard would be directed by someone outside the chain of command. Yet something in the warrior's bearing commanded obedience at a level deeper than regulation. "Who are you, my lord?" The golden visor turned toward him, and for a moment Hadrian thought he glimpsed something human within that technological shell. "Master Chief Petty Officer John Wonder 17, call me Chief." Before Hadrian could ask what manner of rank structure produced such a title, the rumble of Orc engines announced the arrival of something far worse than a war party. The battle wagon that had lurked behind the advanced elements came grinding over the rubble field, its armour plates scarred by countless battles. Mounted on its ram was a weapon that made Imperial Ortok cannons seem like children's toys, a massive bore that spoke of shells capable of cracking fortress walls. Chief's weapon came up in a smooth motion, but even Hadrian could see the futility. Whatever advanced technology the warrior possessed, it could not stop 15 tons of rolling destruction. The battle wagon's engine roared as its driver spotted the small group of humans, and the massive gun began to traverse toward their position. The shell that screamed past them struck the ruins of a supply depot 200 meters away, the explosion lifting chunks of ferrocrete the size of rhino transports. Hadrian felt the heat wash over his face as he pressed himself against the Chimera's twisted hull, but Chief remained standing, his stance wide and balanced as he assessed the threat. "Cortana, I need options." Hadrian heard the words but could not identify their meaning. There was no one else present, no Vox unit active, yet Chief tilted his helmet as though listening to a response. Whatever he heard seemed to satisfy him because he reached for a device attached to his armour's magnetic hardpoints. The weapon he drew looked nothing like Imperial doctrine suggested was possible. Its lines spoke of the same advanced technology as his armour, but where his rifle was built for precision, this was clearly designed for destruction on a massive scale. Chief raised it to his shoulder and sighted on the approaching battle wagon with the calm patience of an executioner. When he fired, the world turned white. The projectile struck the battle wagon's front armour with a sound like thunder given form, the explosion lifting the vehicle's front end clear off the ground. For a moment it balanced on its rear wheels, 15 tons of Orc engineering defying gravity through pure momentum. Then physics reasserted itself, and the war machine came crashing down on its side, crushing 2 Orc boys who had been too slow to clear its path. Chief was already moving, his rifle forgotten as he drew the sidearm from his thigh holster. The weapon that emerged was sleek and purposeful, its design suggesting energy systems beyond Imperial comprehension. He advanced on the overturned battle wagon with the measured pace of a man absolutely confident in his ability to end whatever emerged from the wreckage. The Orcs inside were not dead. Hadrian could hear them bellowing in rage and pain as they struggled to free themselves from the twisted metal. Chief reached the vehicle's rear hatch and positioned himself to cover the opening. When the first green skin emerged, bleeding from a dozen cuts, but still clutching a massive chopper, the energy weapon spoke with a sound like tearing silk. The plasma bolt took the Orc center mass, the superheated gas turning flesh and bone to vapor in an instant. The second Orc learned nothing from his predecessor's fate, emerging with a roar of pure fury, only to meet the same incandescent death. By the time the last survivor crawled from the wreckage, Chief had holstered his weapon and drawn a combat knife that gleamed with monomolecular edges. Hadrian looked away from what followed. When he looked back, Chief was wiping alien blood from the blade with a piece of torn cloth, his movements methodical and efficient. There was no pleasure in the violence, no ritual satisfaction that Hardin had seen in the Astartes. This was simply a problem that required a solution, and Chief had provided one with the minimum necessary force. "Sergeant, your men need to start moving civilians toward the drainage access. I'll hold the perimeter while you organize the evacuation." The words were calm, practical, utterly reasonable. They were also completely insane. Hadrian had seen Chief's capabilities, but holding off an entire orc horde while 40,000 souls crawled through ancient drainage tunnels was beyond even Astartes' capability. He opened his mouth to object, then closed it as he met that golden visor's implacable regard. "How long do you need?" Chief asked, already checking his weapons with the practiced efficiency of a veteran. 6 hours minimum, my lord. The civilians are weak and the tunnels haven't been used in decades. We'll need to clear blockages, establish rest points, treat the wounded as we go. Chief nodded once, the gesture carrying more authority than any imperial salute. 6 hours. I'll give you 8. The promise was delivered with such quiet certainty that Hadrian found himself believing it, despite every tactical manual he had ever studied. He saluted the gesture, feeling somehow inadequate, and began shouting orders to his men. As the guard squad began moving toward the manufacturum's access hatches, Hadrian looked back once to see Chief walking calmly toward the orc lines, his weapons ready and his stride unhurried. The sound of distant engines suggested that 8 hours might not be nearly enough. The tunnel system beneath Manufacturum 7 had been built during the dark age of technology, when human engineering reached heights that the Mechanicus could only dream of reclaiming. Hadrian's lamp beam played across walls carved from living rock, their surfaces smooth as glass despite millennia of neglect. The air was thick with the scent of stagnant water and industrial decay, but it was clean air, free from the smoke and death that choked the surface world. Behind him, 40,000 souls moved through the darkness like a river of ghosts. Children clung to their mothers' robes, their eyes wide with the particular terror that came from understanding that the adults who protected them were themselves afraid. Old men carried younger ones who could not walk, their backs bent beneath burdens that would have broken them under normal circumstances. But these were not normal circumstances, and imperial citizens had learned to endure beyond the limits of flesh when the Emperor's will demanded it. "Contact ahead," whispered Corporal Vex from her position at point. Her aspects showed movement in the tunnel system, but the readings were confused by the ancient technology embedded in the walls. Whatever approached was large and moving with purpose. Hadrian raised his hand to halt the column, the signal passing back through the civilian mass like ripples on a dark pond. In the sudden silence he could hear it, the unmistakable sound of ceramite boots on stone. Whatever approached moved with the measured pace of a space marine, but there had been no artis on Quintanus when the Orc invasion began. The figure that emerged from the shadows wore the midnight blue of the Ultramarines, his armour bearing the honours of a veteran sergeant. His bolt pistol was drawn, but held at a non-threatening angle, and his helmet was maglocked to his belt in a gesture of peaceful intent. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of the Emperor's chosen warriors. "I am Sergeant Cassius of the 4th Company. By what authority do you move Imperial citizens through restricted areas without proper clearance?" Hadrian felt his mouth go dry. The question was perfectly reasonable from an estate's perspective, and carried the implicit threat of summary execution for those who could not provide satisfactory answers. The civilians behind him pressed closer, sensing the danger without understanding its nature. "By the authority of operational necessity, my lord, the surface is overrun, and these souls will die without immediate evacuation." "And who authorized this evacuation?" The Ultramarines' eyes were pale blue, cold as winter ice on a dead world. What commander takes responsibility for abandoning defensive positions? The truth would sound like madness, but Hadrian had no choice but to speak it. "A warrior called Chief, my lord. He holds the surface while we move the civilians to safety." Something shifted in the Astartes expression, a flicker of interest that might have been curiosity or might have been suspicion. "Describe this chief." 8T tall, armour of advanced design, weapons beyond imperial standard. He speaks low Gothic but with an unknown accent. His tactical knowledge as Hadrian searched for words. "Perfect, my lord. Perfect." The word carried a weight of skepticism. "You make bold claims about an unknown warrior, Sergeant." "I make no claims, my lord. I report what I have witnessed." The Ultramarine holstered his bolt pistol and activated his Vox unit. "Command, this is Cassius. I need immediate Ox sweep of Surface Sector 77 looking for unknown superhuman combatant engaging Orc forces." The reply came through loud enough for Hadrian to hear. The voice carrying the authority of a Space Marine captain confirmed Cassius. "We're tracking massive energy discharges from that sector. Whatever's out there is using weapons that don't match any known Imperial pattern. Power signatures suggest plasma technology beyond standard issue." "Understood, Command. I'm investigating. Cassius out." The Ultramarine turned his attention back to Harden, but his manner had shifted from suspicion to professional interest. "Continue your evacuation, Sergeant. I will ascend to verify your claims about this chief, my lord." Hadrian ventured, knowing he risked overstepping his authority. "The surface is heavily contested. The Greenkins have numbers and armour." Sergeant Cassius smiled, the expression transforming his features from marble cold to merely human. "I am Astartes, Sergeant. Let the Greenkins come." The tunnel shook as something massive struck the ground above them, dust falling like snow from the ancient ceiling. In the distance, the sound of weapons fire continued, but it was different now. Chief's precise shots were answered by the deeper bark of bolt rounds, the two rhythms weaving together in a deadly symphony. Above ground, Master Chief moved through the ruins of Quintanis like a wraith-given substance. His motion tracker showed 17 distinct orc formations converging on his position, their crude tactics made predictable by their very simplicity. The Greenskins understood only frontal assault, their primitive minds incapable of the deception and misdirection that made human warfare an art form. Chief appreciated simplicity. It made his job easier. The plasma rifle in his hands had been pushed beyond its normal operational limits. The weapon's heat sinks glowing cherry red despite the cooling systems built into his armour. His ammunition counter showed 37 rounds remaining, enough for perhaps 15 minutes of sustained combat if he maintained his current rate of fire. The energy sword at his hip was fully charged, but close combat against orc numbers would be suicide, even for a Spartan. Time to change the equation. The fuel depot at grid reference 77 Alpha had been abandoned when the orcs first landed, its Prometheum reserves left behind in the Imperial Guard's hasty retreat. Chief had identified it during his initial tactical assessment, marking it as a potential force multiplier if the situation required dramatic solutions. The situation now required the most dramatic solution possible. He sprinted across open ground, his armor's reactive systems adjusting to each footfall as he navigated the rubble field. Behind him, orc shots kicked up clouds of pulverized ferrocrete, their aim wild but their volume dangerous. A slug round sparked off his shoulder plate, the impact absorbed by shields that flickered blue for an instant before reasserting themselves. The depot's perimeter fence had been flattened by orc artillery, its metal posts twisted into abstract sculptures by the heat of explosions. Chief vaulted the wreckage without breaking stride, his enhanced reflexes calculating the precise angle needed to clear the debris. He landed in a combat roll that brought him up behind a storage tank, its surface scarred by shrapnel, but integrity still intact. The Vox unit in his helmet crackled with an unfamiliar signal, the encryption pattern suggesting Imperial military origin. Unknown combatant. This is Sergeant Cassius of the Ultramarines' 4th Company. Identify yourself and state your intentions. Chief keyed his comm system, maintaining overwatch on the approaching orc forces while he spoke. Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, United Nations Space Command. I'm conducting civilian evacuation under combat conditions. The pause that followed lasted several seconds, long enough for Chief to begin wondering if his transmission had been received. When the response came, it carried a note of professional interest that transcended species barriers. Your combat efficiency is noted, Master Chief. What is your tactical assessment? 17 orc formations, approximately 400 combatants total converging on this position. Civilian evacuation requires another 4 hours minimum. I'm preparing to deny this area to enemy forces through thermochemical detonation of stored prometheum. Another pause, shorter this time. You're planning to level a square kilometre of city. Affirmative. The blast radius will eliminate 60% of enemy forces and create a defensive barrier for the evacuation route. The collateral damage will be massive. Chief checked his motion tracker as the first orc scouts appeared at the depot's perimeter. Acceptable losses given the alternative. The channel went quiet, but Chief could hear the distinctive sound of ceramite boots on metal approaching his position. He turned to see a figure in midnight blue armour emerging from behind an overturned transport, the warrior's bearing speaking of centuries of combat experience. The Space Marine's bolt pistol was drawn but not aimed, a gesture of wary neutrality. I am Sergeant Cassius. You fight like Astartes, but your gene signature reads fully human. Explain. The orc war cries were growing louder, their primitive weapons beginning to probe the depot's outer defences. Chief calculated 30 seconds before the position became untenable, but something in the Space Marine's demeanour suggested that this conversation would determine far more than immediate tactical concerns: genetic augmentation, surgical enhancement, technological integration. Not so different from your own process, Sergeant. Cassius moved closer, his pale eyes studying Chief's armour with the intensity of a tech marine examining forbidden architect. The Adeptus Astartes are the Emperor's chosen warriors, created from the gene seed of the Primarchs. There are no others like us, maybe not exactly like you. Chief raised his plasma rifle as movement flickered at the facility's edge. But we share the same mission, protecting humanity. The bolt that took the lead Orc scout in the chest came from Cassius's weapon, the mass-reactive shell exploding inside the creature's torso with surgical precision. Chief's plasma rifle spoke a moment later, the superheated gas reducing 2 more greenkins to component atoms. Side by side, they held the depot's entrance while the main Orc force massed for their assault. Your weapons are impressive, Cassius admitted, ejecting a spent magazine and slamming home a fresh one with practiced efficiency. But your tactics concern me. This Prometheum detonation will destroy valuable infrastructure. Infrastructure can be rebuilt. People can't. The simple truth of the statement seemed to give the Ultramarine pause. Chief used the moment to set the charges he had prepared. Small devices that would chain react through the facility's fuel reserves to create an explosion visible from orbit. The timer showed 5 minutes, enough time to reach minimum safe distance if they moved immediately. The evacuation is proceeding ahead of schedule, Cassius reported, consulting the data stream from his helmet display. Your estimate of 4 hours was conservative. Good. Then we might all survive this. Chief sealed the charge housing and activated the timer. Sergeant, I recommend immediate withdrawal to grid reference 88 Charlie. The Ultramarine's expression shifted to something that might have been respect. After you, Master Chief. They moved through the ruins like a perfectly coordinated fire team. Chief's enhanced reflexes complementing Cassius's centuries of experience. The Orcs followed, their bestial roars echoing from the twisted metal as they sensed prey attempting to escape. What they found instead was a lesson in superior tactics delivered by 2 warriors who had made the study of violence their life's work. The explosion, when it came, turned night into day for 17 seconds. The blast wave shattered windows in undamaged buildings 5 kilometers away, and the mushroom cloud that rose from the depot's remains was visible from the orbital defense platforms. In an instant, Quintanis lost a square kilometer of industrial infrastructure and gained a crater deep enough to serve as a lake. More importantly, it lost 400 Orcs and gained the time needed to save 40,000 human souls. Chief and Cassius picked themselves up from behind the ferrocrete barrier they had used for cover, their armor's systems compensating for the electromagnetic pulse that had temporarily disrupted their electronics. In the distance, emergency sirens wailed as Imperial forces responded to what their sensors interpreted as a tactical nuclear strike. Effective, Cassius admitted, brushing dust from his midnight blue ceramite, though I suspect the Adeptus Mechanicus will have questions about your ordnance. Chief checked his weapon readings, noting that his plasma rifle had finally exceeded safe operating parameters. The barrel glowed with residual heat, and several warning icons flickered in his helmet display. His ammunition reserves were down to 14 rounds, barely enough for a single engagement against determined opposition. Questions can wait. The mission isn't finished. As if summoned by his words, the Vox channel crackled with an Imperial transmission, the encryption codes identifying it as originating from high-level command authority. The voice that emerged was cultured, educated, and carried the particular undertone that suggested inquisitorial involvement. Unknown combatant. This is Inquisitor Vex of the Ordo Xenos. You will cease all combat operations and report to Imperial authorities for classification and debriefing. Any resistance will be interpreted as hostile action against the Throne of Terror. Chief looked at Cassius, noting the subtle shift in the Ultramarine's posture that suggested divided loyalties. The Space Marine's duty to the Imperium was absolute, but his warrior's instincts recognized a kindred spirit in the armored stranger who had saved 40,000 souls through superior tactics and personal courage. Master Chief, Cassius said carefully, the Inquisition's authority is absolute. Even artists must answer their summons. I've never heard of the Inquisition, Sergeant, but I've heard that tone before from officers who mistake authority for leadership. Chief's hand moved to rest on his sidearm's grip. I answered to the mission, not to politicians. The statement hung in the air between them like an unshathed blade. In the distance, the sound of Imperial aircraft announced the arrival of forces that would not be impressed by tactical brilliance or noble intentions. Chief's motion tracker showed multiple incoming contacts, their signatures suggesting heavily armed Valkyrie transports carrying troops equipped for urban combat. "The civilians are safe," Cassius said quietly. "Your mission is accomplished." The mission is never accomplished while humanity faces threats it can't handle alone. Chief's helmet turned toward the approaching aircraft, his stance shifting to the balanced readiness of a warrior preparing for battle. How many more worlds like Quintanis are burning while bureaucrats debate jurisdiction? The first Valkyrie settled onto the rubble field with a whine of turbine engines, its side doors sliding open to disgorge a squad of inquisitorial stormtroopers. Their carapace armour bore the insignia of the Ordo Xenos, and their weapons were trained on Chief before their boots touched the ground. Behind them came a figure whose presence seemed to drain warmth from the air, a woman whose augment eyes glowed with cold fire. Inquisitor Vex was tall and lean, her black coat cut in the style favoured by those who served the Emperor's most secretive organisation. The stormtroopers formed a perimeter around her, their hellguns ready, but not yet aimed. When she spoke, her voice carried the absolute authority of the throne itself. "You will surrender your weapons and submit to Imperial custody. Your technology will be examined by the Adeptus Mechanicus, and your genetic material will be analysed by the appropriate authorities." Chief remained motionless, his armour's sensors automatically cataloguing threats and calculating firing solutions. The stormtroopers were well trained but predictable, their formations textbook examples of Imperial doctrine. The Inquisitor herself was the unknown variable, her augmentics suggesting capabilities that his database could not quantify. Negative. "I'm not Imperial personnel and I don't recognise your authority." The temperature seemed to drop several degrees as Vex's augment focused on Chief with laser intensity. "Your recognition is not required. You're human. You operate on Imperial soil. You interfere with Imperial operations. That makes you subject to Imperial law. I saved 40,000 Imperial citizens. That makes me an ally, not a subject. You detonated an unauthorized nuclear device in an Imperial city. That makes you a terrorist." Chief's hand shifted fractionally toward his sidearm, the movement so subtle that only Cassius noticed it. The Ultramarine stepped sideways, positioning himself where he could cover either combatant, depending on how the situation developed. His bolt pistol remained holstered, but his right hand rested on the weapon's grip. "Master Chief," he said carefully, "the Inquisitor has legal authority, but Inquisitor, this warrior has proven himself in battle. Perhaps accommodation can be reached." Vex's attention shifted to the Space Marine, her expression suggesting that she found his intervention unwelcome. "Sergeant Cassius, your report notes unusual weapons and tactics employed by this individual. Such deviations from standard patterns require thorough investigation. His deviations saved 40,000 lives that would otherwise have been lost to the Greenskin advance. 40,000 lives are insignificant compared to the potential threat posed by unknown human variants operating outside Imperial oversight." Vex raised her hand and Chief's motion tracker identified the device she held as some form of specialized scanner. Gene scans indicate enhanced musculature, reinforced skeletal structure, modified nervous system. This individual represents a potential threat to the established order. The scanner in her hand began to emit a high-pitched whine, its readings apparently confirming whatever suspicions had brought the Inquisitor to this blasted corner of Quintanis. Chief felt his armor's systems registering unusual energy signatures, patterns that suggested the device was probing deeper than mere genetic analysis. "Fascinating," Vex continued, studying the scanner's display with growing interest. "Cortical implants of unknown design integrated with what appears to be artificial intelligence systems. This technology violates several Mechanicus prohibitions against thinking machines." Chief's hand closed on his sidearm's grip as understanding crystallized. These people were not allies in humanity's struggle for survival. They were the kind of bureaucrats who would dissect a weapon instead of using it, who would study a warrior instead of learning from him. He had encountered their type before in the halls of Oi and the corridors of military intelligence. "Cortana," he subvocalized, knowing that his AI companion could hear him, even if the Imperials could not. Assessment. The response came as a data stream directly to his neural implants, invisible to external sensors but clear as spoken words. "John, their technology is impressive, but their doctrine is inflexible. The Inquisitor's scanner is identifying me as an abominable intelligence, which apparently carries a death sentence in this culture. Options: fight or flight. Negotiation doesn't appear to be viable with religious zealots. Chief's assessment matched his AI's analysis. The stormtroopers were beginning to tighten their perimeter, their movement suggesting preparation for either capture or termination. Sergeant Cassius stood caught between duty and honor, his loyalty to the Imperium wearing with his warriors' respect for a fellow protector of humanity. Inquisitor Chief said calmly, his stance shifting into the balanced readiness that preceded violence. I'm going to walk away now. The civilians are safe. The orcs are scattered, and Quintanis is secure. Mission accomplished. Vex's laugh was cold as winter on a dead world. You misunderstand the situation. You're not leaving. You are evidence, and evidence does not choose its own disposition. The Hellguns came up in unison, their energy cells humming with lethal potential. Chief counted 12 targets, their positions automatically catalogued by systems that had been designed for exactly this type of tactical scenario. His sidearm cleared leather in a motion too fast for unenhanced human eyes to follow. The weapons targeting system linking with his armor's sensors to provide accuracy beyond mortal capability. "Stand down," Cassius commanded, his bolt pistol appearing in his hand with the speed of centuries of practice. But the weapon was not aimed at Chief, instead covering the stormtroopers with professional readiness. This warrior has proven his worth in battle. He deserves better than summary execution. Inquisitor Vex's augment eyes blazed with cold fire as she realized that her absolute authority had encountered something unexpected. A Space Marine's honor. "Sergeant Cassius, you are interfering with inquisitorial operations. Stand aside or be declared excommunicate traitorous. I stand with humanity's defenders wherever they may come from." The tableau held for 3 seconds. 12 Hellguns against 1 plasma pistol and 1 bolt weapon, while 2 warriors of different origins stood united in their commitment to protect innocent lives. Then Chief moved, his enhanced reflexes turning the moment into a symphony of controlled violence. His first shot took the squad leader center mass, the plasma bolt reducing the man's carapace armor to molten slag. Cassius's bolt pistol spoke almost simultaneously, the mass-reactive round finding the gap in a stormtrooper's helmet to detonate inside the skull cavity. Chief rolled left as Hellgun beams seared the air where he had been standing, his armor's shields flaring blue as glancing hits dispersed harmlessly across their surface. The Inquisitor was moving too, her augmentatic limbs carrying her across the rubble field with inhuman speed. The weapon she drew from beneath her coat was sleek and purposeful, its design suggesting technologies that matched Chief's own equipment. When she fired, the beam that lanced out was coherent energy of a type his armor had never encountered, and it punched through his shields like they were not there. Pain flared across Chief's left shoulder as the beam seared through the outer layer of his armor plating, the heat cauterizing flesh even as it burned metal. He returned fire without conscious thought, his plasma pistol tracking the Inquisitor's movement with mechanical precision. She dove behind a fallen pillar as superheated gas turned the air where she'd been into brief aurora. Cassius was holding his own against the remaining stormtroopers, his bolt pistol methodically reducing their numbers while he used a destroyed chimera for cover. Each shot was placed with surgical precision, the Ultramarine's centuries of experience showing in the way he conserved ammunition while maximizing lethality. But even Art's reflexes had limits, and the Hellguns were beginning to find their mark. Chief's motion tracker showed more aircraft incoming, their signatures suggesting reinforcements that would overwhelm even combined Spartan and Ertz capabilities. Time was running out, and the mission parameters had shifted from evacuation to escape and evasion. He needed to end this engagement quickly before superior numbers turned tactical victory into strategic defeat. The grenade that rolled toward his position was Imperial manufacture, its design optimized for use against heavily armored targets. Chief identified it in the instant before detonation, his enhanced reflexes carrying him clear of the blast radius, while his armor's systems absorbed the electromagnetic pulse that followed. When he came up from his combat role, Inquisitor Vex was 20 m away with her weapon trained on his center mass. Surrender now, and your death will be swift. Chief's response came in the form of his energy sword, the weapon igniting with a sound like tearing reality. The blade that emerged was coherent energy given form, its edge capable of cutting through any known material. He advanced on the Inquisitor with the measured pace of an executioner, each step calculated to close distance while avoiding her weapon's firing arc. She fired 3 times, the coherent beams scoring hits on his chest plate that sent pain lancing through his torso. But Malia armor had been designed to keep Spartans fighting through injuries that would kill normal humans, and Chief's enhanced physiology turned mortal wounds into mere inconveniences. The energy sword came up in a rising arc that would have bisected her from hip to shoulder. The Inquisitor's augment reflexes saved her life, servo motors carrying her backward just fast enough to avoid dismemberment. Chief's blade carved through the Facrete pillar. She had been standing beside the superheated edge, leaving a wound that glowed like molten metal. But the retreat had put distance between them, and distance favoured the ranged fighter. "John, multiple Imperial aircraft converging on your position," Cortana's voice warned through his neural link. "I'm reading Artie's signatures among the incoming reinforcements. This is about to get much more complicated." Chief's tactical assessment matched his AI's warning. The sound of turbine engines was growing louder, and his motion tracker showed at least 6 aircraft approaching from different vectors. Whatever forces were incoming would be equipped to handle threats much greater than a single Spartan, no matter how capable. Time for a strategic withdrawal. Chief disengaged from his duel with the Inquisitor, his energy sword carving a defensive pattern in the air as he backed toward the drainage access point that had swallowed 40,000 civilians hours before. Cassius was moving too, the Ultramarine's tactical awareness recognizing the same threat parameters that drove Chief's decision. "This way," the Space Marine called, gesturing toward a gap in the rubble that led to the tunnel system. The evacuation route connects to the Underhive transit network. The first of the reinforcement aircraft settled onto the battlefield with mechanical precision, its ramp dropping to discourage warriors in Terminator armor, whose very presence seemed to warp the air around them. These were not ordinary estates, but veterans of the First Company, their ancient suits of tactical dreadnought armor, bearing honors from campaigns that had shaped the galaxy's fate. Brother Captain Titus stepped from the aircraft like a walking fortress, his Stormbolter already tracking toward Chief's position. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of 3 centuries in service to the Emperor, filtered through his armor's Vox grill into something barely human. "Stand down, unknown combatant. You're surrounded and outmatched." Chief's assessment agreed with half of that statement. The Terminators were deploying in textbook formation, their heavy weapons covering every possible escape route except the one that led underground. But outmatched was a relative term, and Chief had learned never to accept enemy assessments of his own capabilities. "Sergeant Cassius," Captain Titus continued, his tone carrying disappointment that cut deeper than any weapon. "Explain your presence in this combat zone." The Ultramarine sergeant stepped forward, his bolt pistol holstered, but his stance indicating readiness for violence. "This warrior saved 40,000 Imperial citizens, my lord. He fights as we fight for humanity's survival. He fights with forbidden technology and unknown augmentations. The Inquisition has declared him a threat to Imperial security. The Inquisition sees threats where warriors see opportunities." Cassius's voice carried a note of defiance that made several Terminators shift their weapons toward him. This chief has proven himself in battle. He deserves judgment by combat, not execution by bureaucracy. The words hung in the air like a challenge to the natural order, a Space Marine questioning inquisitorial authority in defense of an unknown warrior. Chief felt something shift in his understanding of these people, recognizing in Cassius a kindred spirit who placed honor above expedience. "John," Cortana whispered through their private link, "the sergeant's loyalty is admirable, but it's going to get him killed along with us. We need an exit strategy." Chief's motion tracker showed the Terminators completing their encirclement, their positions chosen to create overlapping fields of fire that would reduce any escape attempt to suicide. But the tracker also showed something else, a massive energy signature approaching from the edge of the detection grid, moving with the ponderous inevitability of a walking mountain. The ground began to shake with rhythmic impacts that spoke of something far larger than any aircraft. In the distance, emergency klaxons wailed as defense batteries tracked an unknown contact that moved with purpose through the city's outer districts. Whatever approached was massive enough to trigger anti-orbital defenses and hostile enough to justify their activation. "Dreadnought contact," reported one of the Terminators, his OPEX readings transmitted through the squad's tactical network. Unknown configuration, but massive power signature. Range decreasing rapidly. Captain Titus's helmet turned toward the approaching threat, his centuries of experience reading the tactical implications with practiced ease. Brother Maximus, establish overwatch position. Brothers Castor and Pollux prepare anti-armor protocols. The mechanical giant that crested the rubble field stood 30 feet tall, its form blending human engineering with alien aesthetics in ways that made Imperial doctrine seem crude by comparison. Chief recognized the design immediately, a hunter, one of the Covenant war machines he had fought during humanity's first interstellar war. But this one was different, its armor bearing scars from battles fought in the dark between stars. When it spoke, its voice was the thunder of ancient gods given digital form. Reclaimer, you have been located. The great journey awaits your participation. The plasma cannon mounted on its shoulder began to charge with a sound like reality tearing apart. Chief dove behind a ferrocrete barrier as coherent energy lanced through the space where he had been standing, the beam carving a molten trench 20 meters long. The Terminators scattered their heavy armor, no protection against weapons designed to crack starship hulls. What in the Emperor's name is that thing? Captain Titus demanded, his storm bolter chattering as he engaged the mechanical giant with the rounds that sparked harmlessly off its energy shields. Covenant technology, Chief replied, checking his weapon's charge levels with automatic precision. Alien war machine built by a religious hegemony that considered humanity an affront to their gods. Xenos filth. Titus snarled, the hatred in his voice deeper than anything Chief had heard from human throats. All aliens are the enemy of mankind. The hunter's main cannon spoke again, this time targeting the Terminators with methodical precision. Brother Maximus disappeared in a flash of superheated plasma, his ancient armor reduced to component atoms in an instant. The survivors spread out, their tactical training adapting to threats beyond Imperial experience. Chief moved through the chaos with fluid grace, his enhanced reflexes turning the battlefield into a series of tactical problems that could be solved through superior positioning and accurate fire. His plasma pistol found the hunter's sensor cluster, the coherent energy disrupting its targeting systems long enough for him to reach better cover. Sergeant Cassius appeared at his side, the Ultramarine's armor scarred by near misses, but his spirit unbroken. Your enemies have followed you to Quintanis, apparently. Chief ejected his pistol-spent power cell and slammed home his last replacement. Any suggestions? The hunter's shields can be overloaded by sustained fire, but it requires coordinated strikes from multiple angles. Cassius consulted his armor's tactical display, calculating firing solutions with the ease of long practice. The Terminators can provide suppressing fire while we flank. The plan was tactically sound, but it required cooperation from warriors who had been trying to kill him moments before. Chief looked across the battlefield to where Captain Titus was marshalling his remaining Terminators, the ancient warriors forming a firing line despite the alien threat bearing down on them. "Captain," Chief called, his external speakers carrying his voice across the combat zone, "I'm proposing a temporary ceasefire to deal with the Xenos threat." Titus's response came in the form of concentrated fire that forced the hunter to adjust its position, creating the opening that Chief needed to advance. Whatever the Ultramarine captain thought of unknown warriors with forbidden technology, his hatred of aliens ran deeper than any personal considerations. The battle that followed was a masterpiece of combined arms tactics. 3 centuries of Astartes experience melding with Spartan training to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Chief and Cassius flanked left while the Terminators provided covering fire, their heavy weapons hammering the hunter's shields with relentless precision. The alien war machine adapted to their tactics with mechanical efficiency, its plasma cannons sweeping across the battlefield in patterns designed to deny them cover. But Chief had fought these things before, and he knew their weaknesses. The hunter's strength was its firepower, but that same strength made it predictable. He sprinted across open ground as the cannon tracked him, counting the seconds until the weapon's charge cycle completed. At the last possible moment, he dove right, the plasma beam carving through empty air while he brought his own weapon to bear. The shot that followed was placed with inhuman precision, striking the hunter's power coupling at the exact moment when its shields recycled. The explosion that followed painted the sky in shades of blue fire, the hunter's plasma reserves detonating with enough force to crack the ferrocrete beneath its feet. When the light faded, nothing remained but twisted metal and the acrid smell of superheated air. Chief picked himself up from the rubble, his armor's systems compensating for the electromagnetic pulse that had temporarily disrupted his electronics. Around him, The surviving Terminators were doing the same, their ancient warplate designed to function in environments that would kill lesser equipment. Impressive, Captain Titus admitted, his Stormbolter trained on Chief but not actively targeting. Your combat efficiency rivals that of the Astartes. I had good training. Chief's helmet turned toward the crater where the hunter had stood, scanning for additional threats. But this isn't over. Where there's one Covenant hunter-killer team, there are usually more. As if summoned by his words, the sky began to darken with shapes that spoke of alien technology beyond human comprehension. Dropships descended through the clouds like mechanical locusts, their hulls scarred by the journey between stars. Each vessel carried warriors who had spent millennia perfecting the art of xenocide, their faith in the great journey absolute and unshakable. "Throne preserve us," whispered Brother Castor, his Auspex readings displaying numbers that made victory seem impossible. Hundreds of contacts, all unknown configurations. Chief's assessment was more precise, but no more encouraging. Covenant Expeditionary Force, probably a full battle group. They're here for me specifically. "Why?" Captain Titus demanded, his tactical mind grappling with implications that reached beyond a single world. "What makes you worth such investment in resources? Because I'm the one who destroyed their Holy Ring worlds. I'm the demon who ended their great journey and scattered their hegemony." Chief checked his weapons one final time, knowing that the coming battle would test every skill he had ever learned. To them, I'm the ultimate heretic. The first dropship touched down 300 meters away, its ramp dropping to reveal warriors whose armor gleamed with the light of artificial suns. The Covenant elites who emerged moved with predatory grace, their energy weapons humming with barely contained power. Behind them came grunts in their thousands, their methane tanks hissing as they prepared for battle. Inquisitor Vex emerged from behind her makeshift cover, her augmentatic eyes blazing with fanatic intensity as she processed the implications of Chief's revelation. "You brought this Xenos filth to an Imperial world. You're responsible for whatever follows. I am responsible for stopping it." Chief's energy sword ignited with a sound like tearing silk, the blade casting azure light across his scarred armor, just like I've been stopping it for 27 years. The battle cry that rose from 1,000 alien throats was answered by the roar of bolt of fire and the whine of energy weapons. Chief moved through the chaos like death-given form, his sword carving through Covenant shields and armor with equal ease. Beside him, Sergeant Cassius fought with the precision of centuries, each bolt round finding its mark despite the alien warrior's superior reflexes. The Terminators advanced like walking fortresses, their heavy weapons reducing entire squads of grunts to component atoms. But even their ancient armor could not stand against the focused fire of elite energy weapons, and one by one, the Emperor's chosen warriors fell to alien technology. Chief reached the first elite as its energy sword met his own in a shower of sparks. The two weapons locked in a contest between technologies separated by millions of years of development. The alien warrior was faster than human reflexes could follow, but Chief's enhanced nervous system turned milliseconds into tactical eternities. His blade found the gap in the elite's armor plating, coherent energy burning through flesh and bone with surgical precision. The alien fell backward, its mandibles clicking in what might have been surprise or respect. Chief was already moving, his sword weaving patterns of light that carved through the next wave of attackers like scythe through wheat. "John, I'm reading massive energy build-up from the lead dropship," Cortana's voice warned through their private channel. "They're charging some kind of orbital strike weapon." Chief's tactical assessment confirmed his AI's analysis. The largest of the Covenant vessels was indeed preparing to fire, its vententral weapon bays glowing with the light of contained stars. Whatever ordnance they planned to use would reduce several square kilm to molten glass, ending the battle through simple annihilation. Time for the final gambit. "Sergeant Cassius," Chief called, his voice carrying across the battlefield despite the chaos of combat. "Can your aircraft carry 2 passengers?" The Ultramarine's bolt pistol removed an elite's head before he responded. "If you're planning what I think you're planning, it's suicide. It's the mission." Chief's energy sword carved through a grunt squad as he fought toward the Ultramarine's position. The only way to stop orbital bombardment is to take out their command ship. The ship is 3 kilometers above the surface and defended by energy shields that could stop battleship fire. Cassius ejected a spent magazine and slammed home his last replacement. "Even if we could reach it, 2 warriors cannot assault a capital vessel. 2 warriors destroyed Halo. 2 warriors can handle 1 Covenant cruiser. The statement carried such quiet certainty that Cassius found himself believing it despite every tactical manual he had ever studied. He activated his Vox channel, requesting immediate extraction from assets that might or might not still exist. The response came through static filled with interference from alien jamming systems. Transport inbound. 30 seconds to pick up. The Valkyrie that descended through the fire-filled sky bore the scars of atmospheric combat, its hull plates peppered with plasma burns and its starboard engine trailing smoke. But its pilot held steady as Chief and Cassius fought their way to the impromptu landing zone. The aircraft's door gunner providing covering fire with disciplined bursts. Chief leaped aboard as the Valkyrie lifted off, the alien ground forces falling away beneath them like discarded toys. Through the aircraft's viewports, he could see the Covenant cruiser hanging in Quintana's upper atmosphere like a metal moon, its hull gleaming with the light of technologies beyond human understanding. "This is insane!" The Valkyrie's pilot called over the engine noise. "That ship's shields will vaporize us the moment we come into range, not if we're moving fast enough." Chief checked his remaining ordnance, noting that his last plasma grenade would have to serve for breaching charges. "How fast can this thing go?" "Fast enough to get us killed in style," the pilot replied with the fatalistic humour of Imperial Guard aviators. "Strap in and prepare for the ride of your lives." The Valkyrie's engines screamed as they pushed beyond safe operating parameters, the aircraft climbing through Quintanus's upper atmosphere like a bullet fired from the planet's surface. Around them, Covenant fighter craft moved to intercept, their plasma weapons reaching out with lethal intent. Sergeant Cassius returned fire through the Valkyrie's side door, his bolt pistol chattering as he engaged targets that moved within human grace. Each shot was placed with surgical precision, the ultramarine centuries of experience showing in the way he led his targets through 3-dimensional space. The cruiser's shields flared to life as they approached, energy barriers designed to stop capital ship weapons, creating aurora displays across the hull. But the Valkyrie was too small and too fast to trigger the main defensive systems, slipping through gaps in coverage that had been designed for much larger threats. Chief activated his armor's magnetic clamps as the Valkyrie's ramp dropped, the aircraft's slipstream trying to tear him from the deck plates. Below them, the cruiser's hull stretched away like a metal landscape, its surface studded with weapons emplacements and sensor arrays. "Jump in 3, he called to Cassius, trusting the Ultramarine's reflexes to match his own enhanced capabilities. 2-1, go. They fell through Quintanus's thin upper atmosphere like twin meteors, their armoured forms locked in terminal velocity as they plummeted toward the alien vessel. Chief's motion tracker calculated impact vectors and approach angles, his enhanced reflexes preparing to turn a potentially fatal landing into a controlled insertion. The cruiser's hull rose to meet them with frightening speed, its alien metal gleaming like polished obsidian. Chief's magnetic clamps engaged at the last possible moment, locking his armour to the ship's superstructure with forces that would have torn a normal human apart. Beside him, Cassius landed with the controlled violence of 3 centuries' experience, his ceramite boots striking sparks from the alien hull. "Breach point located," Chief reported, identifying an access hatch that led to the ship's command deck. His plasma grenade adhered to the alien metal with molecular bonding agents, its timer set for minimum safe distance. The explosion that followed punched through the cruiser's hull like tissue paper, alien atmosphere venting into space in a cloud of frozen gases. Chief dropped through the breach with his energy sword already ignited, ready to face whatever defenders waited within. The command deck of a Covenant cruiser was a cathedral of alien technology, its walls lined with holographic displays that showed tactical information in scripts that hurt human eyes to read. At its centre stood a figure whose presence seemed to bend space around itself, a Covenant hierarch whose very existence was an affront to human understanding. When it spoke, its voice was the whisper of dying stars given form. So the demon comes to us at last. The prophets foretold this moment when the destroyer of sacred rings would face judgment for his crimes against the gods. Chief's response came in the form of violence, his energy sword carving through the air toward the hierarch mass. The alien warrior moved with fluid grace, its own plasma blade meeting his in a shower of sparks that illuminated the command deck in strobing light. Behind them, Sergeant Cassius engaged the bridge crew with methodical precision, his bolt rounds finding their marks despite the alien's superior technology. Each shot was a prayer to the Emperor, each killer hymn of human superiority over Xeno's filth. The duel between Chief and the Hierarch was a thing of deadly beauty. Two warriors separated by species and philosophy united in their mastery of violence. The Hierarch's blade were patterns that spoke of techniques perfected over millennia, while Chief's sword moved with the precision of enhanced reflexes and perfect training. Your heresy ends here, demon. The Hierarch, its plasma blade seeking the gaps in Chief's armor. The great journey will continue, and humanity's blasphemy will be cleansed from the galaxy. The great journey ended when I destroyed your halos. Chief's blade found its mark, coherent energy burning through alien flesh and bone, and it's going to stay ended. The Hierarch fell backward, its lifeblood pooling on the command deck's polished floor. But even in death, its hand moved toward a control panel, whose purpose Chief recognized with cold certainty. The Glassmaker, the Covenant's ultimate weapon, was charging for planetary bombardment. Chief reached the controls as alien warnings began blaring through the ship's communication systems. His hands moved across holographic interfaces with practiced efficiency, Cortana's knowledge of Covenant systems guiding his movements as he worked to prevent the annihilation of Quintanis. "John, I can't stop the firing sequence," his AI warned through their private channel. "But I can redirect the beam. There's a Covenant staging area in the outer system, maybe 300 ships holding position near the fourth planet." The choice was simple and terrible: save Quintanis and its millions of human souls, or allow the Covenant fleet to regroup for another assault. Chief's finger hovered over the targeting control for perhaps a full second before military necessity overcame personal philosophy. The Glassmaker fired once, its beam reaching across the void to find the Covenant staging area with perfect precision. 300 ships died in an instant, their hulls reduced to component atoms by a weapon that had been built to crack planets. The fleet that had come to reclaim the demon was scattered to the solar wind, their great journey ending in fire and silence. Chief and Cases fought their way back to the breach point as the cruiser began its death spiral toward Quintanis' surface. Behind them, alien warriors died in the corridors as atmosphere vented into space and gravity failed. The ship that had brought Xenocide to an Imperial world became its own funeral pea, burning like a second sun as it fell toward the planet below. The Valkyrie that picked them up from the cruiser's hull was scarred by combat and running on emergency power. But its pilot held steady as they transferred from the dying alien vessel. Through the aircraft's viewports, Chief watched the cruiser's final moments as it broke apart in Quintanis' atmosphere, its fragments raining down on empty wasteland far from human habitation. "It's finished," Sergeant Cassius said quietly, his armor bearing fresh scars from their assault on the alien command deck. "The Xenos threat is ended." Chief nodded, but his tactical mind was already processing the broader implications. The Covenant fleet had been destroyed, but other threats remained. The Imperium's response to his presence would not end with a single battle, and the Inquisition's questions would only grow more insistent with time. As if summoned by his thoughts, Inquisitor Vex's voice crackled through the Valky's Vox system, her transmission carrying the absolute authority of the throne itself. "Master Chief, you will submit to Imperial custody immediately. Your actions today have raised questions that demand answers." Chief looked out at the scarred landscape of Quintanis, where 40,000 human souls lived because he had been willing to make hard choices in impossible circumstances. The mission was complete, but the war for humanity's survival would continue long after he was gone. "Negative," he said quietly, his words carrying across the Vox channel to reach ears that would never understand their meaning. "The mission never ends." The Valky's engine screamed as it dove toward Quintanis' surface, carrying two warriors who had saved a world toward whatever fate awaited them in the grim darkness of the far future. Behind them, the alien cruiser's deathlight faded into memory, another victory in humanity's endless struggle against the dark. But in the depths of space, ancient machines registered the energy signatures of weapons that should not exist. And elder intelligences turned their attention toward a galaxy where humanity's champions walked among the stars. The Master Chief had come to the 41st millennium, and nothing would ever be the same. The tunnel system beneath Quintanis stretched for hundreds of kilometers, its passages carved from living rock by machines that had forgotten their own makers. Chief moved through the darkness like a ghost, his armor's systems mapping corridors that had not seen human footprints in millennia. Behind him, Sergeant Cassius followed with the measured pace of a warrior who had learned patience through 3 centuries of service to the Emperor. They had been walking for 6 hours, moving deeper into the planet's crust through maintenance shafts and forgotten passages that connected the underhive to the ancient geothermal plants above them. Imperial forces scoured the surface for any trace of the warrior who had destroyed an entire alien fleet with captured weapons, but the search grids could not penetrate the technological marvels that lay beneath Quintanus' surface. The passages continue for another 50 kilometers, Cassius reported, consulting his armor's OPEX readings, but they terminate at what appears to be a sealed facility of unknown origin. Chief's motion tracker confirmed the Ultramarine's assessment, showing a massive structure buried in the planet's mantle, like a technological seed waiting for spring. The energy signatures were unlike anything in his database, patterns that suggested technologies from an age when humanity had reached for godhood, stood among the stars. Dark age of technology, he mused, recognizing the implications even as he dreaded them. Whatever's down there, it's been waiting a long time. The facility's outer airlock was a marvel of engineering that put Imperial technology to shame, its mechanisms sealed by protocols that had survived 25,000 years of neglect. Chief's armor interfaced with the ancient systems through data ports that predated the Imperium's founding. Cortana's analysis, unlocking security measures with the patience of digital archaeology. The doors opened with a whisper of equalizing pressure, revealing corridors that stretched away into luminous infinity. The walls were lined with stasis chambers whose occupants had been sleeping since before the Emperor walked among men, their faces peaceful in artificial dreams of a better tomorrow. "By the throne," Cassius breathed, his voice carrying awe that transcended mere amazement. "These people have been here since the beginning." Chief moved between the stasis chambers with growing understanding, his enhanced vision reading nameplate inscriptions in languages that had not been spoken in millennia. These were not random refugees from humanity's golden age, but scientists and warriors who had been selected for preservation according to criteria that spoke of desperate foresight. Dr. Catherine Halsey's face looked exactly as he remembered it, her features unmarked by the years that had separated them across time and space. The nameplate beside her chamber read, "Creator of the Spartan Program, Architect of Human Transcendence," followed by dates that placed her suspension during the final years of the Dark Age's collapse. "Cortana," Chief whispered, knowing that his AI would recognize the face as clearly as he did. "It's her. She made it." "John, the stasis readings indicate she's been in perfect suspension for over 25,000 years, but the facility's power systems are failing. These chambers have maybe hours before life support collapses completely." Chief's hands moved across the ancient control panels with practiced efficiency, his armor's systems interfacing with technologies that had been old when Terra was young. The revival process was automated, designed to bring the sleepers back to consciousness without trauma or disorientation. Dr. Holz's eyes opened to meet his visor, and for a moment, Chief saw recognition flash across features that had not aged a day since their last meeting. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of dreams that had lasted longer than civilizations. "John, you found me, Mom." The word carried more weight than any Imperial salute. Years of shared history compressed into a single syllable. "We need to move. This facility is compromised and there are people topside who want answers we can't give them." Holly's assessment was characteristically swift, her enhanced intellect processing the tactical situation with scientific precision. "The Covenant found you again. They found me. I stopped them. But there are other threats now, human ones who don't understand what we represent." Dr. Haley rose from her stasis chamber with the fluid grace of someone whose body had been preserved at its absolute peak, her movement speaking of genetic modifications that matched Chief's own enhancements. When she looked at Sergeant Cases, her expression carried curiosity rather than alarm. "Space Marine," she said, identifying the Ultramarine's nature with the same clinical precision she had once applied to Spartan candidates. "Fascinating. Humanity developed its own augmentation program after the collapse." Cassius stepped forward with the formal bearing of one addressing a figure from legend, his helmet held respectfully at his side. "Doctor, your reputation precedes you across the millennia. The Adeptus Mechanicus considers you one of the greatest innovators of the Dark Age." The Adeptus Mechanicus. Halsey's tone carried notes of disapproval that suggested familiarity with the organization's methods. "I take it humanity's relationship with artificial intelligence has become somewhat strained." Chief's helmet turned toward Cortana's projection, which had appeared beside him as the facility systems came fully online. The AI's holographic form flickered with processing load as she integrated with technologies that had been designed specifically for her capabilities. "Dr. Halsey," Cortana said, her voice carrying relief that transcended mere programming. "I've maintained operational status for over 27 years, but I'm approaching final dispensation. My matrix is beginning to collapse." The reunion between creator and creation was interrupted by the sound of distant explosions. The facility's ancient structure trembling as Imperial forces began their systematic search of the underground networks. Time was running out, and Chief's tactical mind was already processing evacuation routes through passages that might or might not still exist. "Doctor, we need to move. Imperial forces are converging on this position, and they're not interested in negotiation." Dr. Haley moved to a control station that had waited 25 millennia for her return, her fingers dancing across interfaces that responded to her touch, like faithful servants recognizing their master. Data cascaded across holographic displays showing facility layouts and system diagnostics that painted a picture of technological marvels barely holding themselves together through automated maintenance. "John, there's something down here that the Imperium cannot be allowed to find. Something that could change the balance of power in this galaxy." The chamber she led them to was a cathedral of human achievement, its walls lined with manufacturing systems that could build anything from plasma rifles to starship drives. At its center stood a device that hurt to look at directly, its form suggesting geometries that existed in dimensions beyond human perception. "A halo," Chief said, recognizing the technology despite its unfamiliar configuration, but different, modified. "Not a weapon," Dr. Holy confirmed, her voice carrying pride that had survived 25,000 years of stasis dreams. "A tool, the Master Builder's final gift to humanity, hidden away until we were ready to claim our inheritance." The device pulsed with energies that made Chief's armor system scream warnings about exotic radiation and spatial distortions. But beneath the chaos of readings, he could sense something else. Purpose. This was not the random product of Dark Age hubris, but something built with specific intent by minds that understood consequences. "What does it do?" Sergeant Cases asked, his tactical mind grappling with implications that reached beyond military comprehension. "It fixes things," Dr. Holly replied, her smile carrying the satisfaction of a puzzle finally solved. Genetic damage from mutation, technological degradation from neglect, even the slow entropy that has been eating at human civilization since the Age of Strife began. Chief felt understanding dawn like a cold sun rising over a battlefield. "You're talking about reversing 10,000 years of decline. I'm talking about giving humanity back its birthright." Dr. Halsey's hand moved toward an activation panel that glowed with the promise of transformation. "The Imperium thinks it preserves human civilization, but it's actually embalming it. This device can restore what was lost, return what was stolen by time and ignorance." The facility shook again as Imperial forces drew closer, their demolition charges working through ancient barriers with systematic determination. Chief's motion tracker showed multiple contacts converging on their position, including signatures that matched Art's power armor. "Doctor, the decision has to be made now. Do we activate the device or do we run?" Dr. Haley looked at the control panel, then at Chief, then at the Space Marine who had fought beside him, despite orders from his own commanders. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of choices that would echo through the millennia. The Imperium fears change above all else. If they find this technology, they'll lock it away or destroy it rather than risk disrupting their careful stagnation. Her hand hovered over the activation controls, fingers trembling with the magnitude of the decision. "But if we use it without their consent, they'll hunt us to the ends of the galaxy." "They're already hunting us," Chief pointed out, his pragmatic assessment cutting through philosophical complexity. "The question is whether we give them something worth hunting for." The explosion that tore through the facility's outer chambers decided the issue, ancient barriers finally yielding to Imperial determination. Chief could hear the distinctive whine of bolt weapons echoing through the corridors, accompanied by voices that carried the authority of those who served the Golden Throne. Dr. Hal's hand came down on the activation panel with decisive force, and the universe held its breath. The device at the chamber's center came to life with a sound-like reality being rewritten, its exotic energies reaching out through dimensions that human science had barely begun to understand. Chief felt the change begin in his own enhanced physiology. Genetic improvements that had been slowly degrading over decades, suddenly stabilizing and optimizing beyond their original parameters. Beside him, Sergeant Cassius gasped as his own augmentations responded to the device's influence. Gene seed modifications that had been limited by 10 millennia of accumulated errors suddenly expressing their full potential. The Ultramarine's already impressive capabilities expanded exponentially, his mind racing with tactical possibilities that had been locked away by biological constraints. But the device's influence reached far beyond the chamber where they stood. Across Quintanis, Imperial forces felt the change as their own genetics responded to energies that worked on a cellular level to repair damage that had accumulated over generations. Guardsmen found their reflexes sharpening, their endurance increasing, their minds clearing of the fog that came from breathing recycled air in hive cities. In orbit, the crews of Imperial Navy vessels stared in amazement as their ships' ancient systems began to function with an efficiency not seen since their construction. Machine spirits that had been barely responsive for centuries suddenly sang with the joy of perfect operation. Their programming restored to factory specifications by energies that treated technological entropy as just another form of decay to be reversed. The effect rippled outward from Quintanis like a wave of restoration, reaching toward other worlds in the sector with the inevitability of physical law. On Forge worlds, tech marines watched in awe as standard template constructs that had been corrupted by time suddenly began producing devices that matched their original specifications. In the underhives of distant planets, children born with the mutations of industrial toxins found their genetic damage healing as though it had never existed. By the Emperor's blood, Cassius whispered, feeling changes in his own body that transcended mere physical improvement. What have you done? Dr. Holy smiled as she monitored the device's output, her scientific mind cataloguing improvements that would have taken centuries to achieve through conventional means. I've given humanity a chance to remember what it was before fear made it forget what it could become. The sound of approaching boots announced the arrival of Imperial forces, their movements coordinated by centuries of tactical doctrine. Chief's motion tracker showed Terminator armor signatures in the main corridor, supported by what appeared to be inquisitorial stormtroopers carrying specialized equipment. Master Chief Inquisitor Vex's voice echoed through the ancient chambers, her words carrying the absolute authority of the throne itself. You will deactivate that device immediately and surrender yourself for interrogation. The changes you have initiated represent a clear threat to Imperial stability. Chief looked at Dr. Holy, then at the device that continued its work of restoration, then at Sergeant Cassius, whose loyalty had transcended the bonds of duty to embrace something greater. The choice was simple, even if its consequences would echo through the ages. Negative, he replied, his voice carrying across the facility's ancient corridors with quiet certainty. The mission continues. The Terminators who entered the chamber moved with the ponderous inevitability of walking fortresses, their storm bolters trained on Chief with professional precision. But there was something different about them now, a sharpness to their movements that spoke of capabilities enhanced beyond their already formidable baselines. Captain Titus stepped forward, his ancient armor bearing the scars of 3 centuries in service to the Emperor. When he spoke, his voice carried confusion alongside its customary authority. What have you done to us, Master Chief? My brothers report enhanced capabilities across all parameters. I've given you back what was always yours, Dr. Holy interjected, her scientific mind cataloguing the improvements in the estate's physical performance. The gene seed of the Primarchs was designed to produce capabilities far beyond what your Imperium has achieved. 10 millennia of accumulated errors have been holding you back. Inquisitor X emerged from behind the Terminators like a shadow-given substance, her augmentatic eyes blazing with cold fire as she processed the implications of the device's activation. You speak of improvements, but improvement implies change, and change is the path to corruption. Change is the path to survival, Chief countered, his energy sword igniting with a sound like tearing silk. Stagnation is death by another name. The standoff that followed lasted perhaps 3 seconds, 2 philosophies of human development facing each other across the width of a chamber that had waited 25 millennia for this moment. Then Sergeant Cassius made his choice, his bolt pistol appearing in his hand as he stepped between the Terminators and the device that had restored humanity's birthright. Brothers, he said, his voice carrying the weight of newfound understanding. We have spent 10,000 years fighting to preserve what we thought was humanity's greatest achievement. But what if we were wrong? What if our greatest achievement was never the Imperium, but the species that created it? Captain Titus raised his Stormbolter, the weapon's targeting systems automatically locking onto the sergeant who had chosen heresy over duty. Brother Cass, stand down. You have been compromised by Xenos technology. I have been enlightened by human technology, Cassius replied, his stance unwavering despite the odds arrayed against him. Technology created by the same species that produced the Emperor himself. The philosophical debate might have continued, but Chief's tactical mind was processing more immediate concerns. His motion tracker showed additional contacts approaching through the facility's outer chambers, signatures that matched Adeptus Mechanicus equipment. Whatever forces the Imperium had brought to Quintanus were converging on this chamber with the single-minded determination of those who served the Omnissiah. "Doctor," he said quietly, his enhanced hearing picking up the distinctive whine of servo skulls and the mechanical tread of combat servitors. "How long does the device need to complete its work?" Dr. Hewley consulted readings that flowed across holographic displays like digital poetry, her augmented intellect processing data streams that would have overwhelmed baseline human cognition. The local effect is complete, but the restoration wave is still propagating through the sector. If we can hold this position for another 10 minutes, the changes will become irreversible. 10 minutes. Chief's assessment was characteristically pragmatic against Terminator squads, Mechanicus forces, and inquisitorial stormtroopers in a confined space with limited ammunition. "The odds are poor," Cassius agreed, checking his bolt pistol's magazine with professional precision. "But the stakes justify the risk." The sound of approaching machinery announced the arrival of forces that placed doctrine above philosophy. Servo skulls streaming into the chamber like mechanical locusts, while combat servitors took position to cover every possible angle of escape. The tech priest who followed them was a figure from Nightmare, his flesh replaced by mechanisms that clicked and whirred with each movement. "Magos Vex," Inquisitor Vex said, acknowledging her companion with the cold courtesy reserved for necessary allies. "Begin technical analysis of the device. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." The tech priest's response came through Vox grills that turned human speech into something barely recognizable as language. Preliminary scans indicate standard template construct origin, but modified beyond recognition. The technological sophistication exceeds current understanding by several orders of magnitude. Can it be shut down? Negative. The device is integrated with the planet's core infrastructure through quantum entanglement protocols that predate Imperial records. Termination would require planetary sterilization. She felt rather than heard Cortana's digital presence as she interfaced with the facility's systems, her consciousness dancing through data streams that had been designed specifically for artificial intelligences of her caliber. When she spoke, her voice carried satisfaction that transcended mere programming. "John, I've integrated with the device's control systems. The restoration process can't be stopped, but I can accelerate it. Give me 2 more minutes and the changes will propagate beyond this sector into neighboring systems." "Do it," Chief said, raising his energy sword as the Terminators began to advance. "Whatever happens next, we make sure it was worth it." The battle that followed was unlike anything the ancient chamber had witnessed. 2 enhanced humans and a space marine holding a position that would determine humanity's future against forces that believed preservation of the status quo was more important than evolution. Chief moved between the Terminators like death given form, his energy sword carving through ceramite and steel with equal ease. Cassius fought with the precision of centuries, each bolt round placed with surgical accuracy despite the chaos surrounding them. But even enhanced art's reflexes had limits, and the combined firepower of Terminator squads and combat servitors was beginning to tell. Dr. Holy worked at the device's control systems with desperate efficiency, her enhanced intellect racing against time as she monitored the restoration process around her. The battle raged with the sound of thunder and the scent of ozone, energy weapons and explosive rounds turning the ancient chamber into a vision of technological hell. "Cortana," she called, her voice barely audible above the din of combat. "Status report, 97% complete," the AI replied, her holographic form flickering as she diverted processing power to maintain the acceleration sequence. "But John's biometrics are showing critical damage. He can't maintain this pace much longer." Chief's armor was indeed failing, its energy shields flickering as repeated hits from Stormbolter rounds took their toll. His left arm hung useless at his side, servo motors damaged beyond field repair, but his energy sword continued to weave patterns of light that held the Terminators at bay, each strike calculated to maximize damage while conserving his remaining strength. John Cases called his own armor bearing the scars of sustained combat. The device is nearly complete. We just need to hold for 30 more seconds. The sergeant's words were answered by a storm of fire from the combat servitors, their automated systems identifying him as the primary threat to Imperial doctrine. Chief threw himself into the path of the incoming rounds, his armor absorbing punishment that would have killed any unenhanced human. Pain lanced through his consciousness as servo motors failed and life support systems began their emergency protocols. But 30 seconds was an eternity in combat time, and Spartan training had taught him to endure beyond the limits of flesh when the mission demanded it. The device's final activation sent a pulse of energy through the chamber that made reality itself seem to shiver, exotic particles rearranging matter on a quantum level to restore humanity to its intended perfection. Chief felt the change wash over him like a tide of healing, his damaged armor repairing itself and his wounded body regenerating with impossible speed. Around the chamber, Imperial forces staggered as their own genetics responded to the restoration wave, centuries of accumulated degradation reversing in moments. Even the combat servitors seemed to function with improved efficiency, their machine spirits singing with the joy of perfect operation. "It's done," Dr. Halsey announced, her voice carrying satisfaction that had waited 25 millennia for expression. "The restoration is complete and propagating beyond our ability to contain. Within days, every human in this sector will have access to their full genetic potential." Inquisitor Vex raised her weapon with the mechanical precision of fanatical duty, her augmentatic eyes blazing with cold fire as she targeted the device's control systems. "Then we ensure that this contamination spreads no further." The shot that followed was answered by Chief's energy sword, the coherent blade intercepting the energy beam in a shower of sparks that illuminated the chamber in strobing light. But the damage was done, control systems failing as exotic energies discharged through pathways never meant to carry such loads. "The device is stable," Cortana reported, her holographic form solidifying as the facility's systems compensated for the damage. "But the control interfaces are destroyed. There's no way to reverse the process now." Chief lowered his energy sword as understanding dawned on the faces around him. The choice had been made, the die cast, the future secured. Whatever came next, humanity would face it with capabilities that matched its ancient birthright. Captain Titus was the first to speak, his voice carrying wonder that transcended military discipline. "Brother Cassius, I can feel it. The gene seed is expressing capabilities that have been dormant for millennia. We are becoming what the Emperor always intended us to be." "And what of the price?" Inquisitor Vex demanded, her fanatical certainty cracking in the face of changes that exceeded her ability to categorize. "What of the stability that has preserved humanity for 10,000 years?" "Stability built on fear is not preservation," Chief replied, his voice carrying the quiet certainty of one who had seen civilizations rise and fall. "It's just slow decay with better marketing." The philosophical debate might have continued, but the sound of distant explosions announced the arrival of forces that operated on a scale beyond individual combat. Through the Fascel's ancient corridors came the tread of something vast and implacable. Mechanical footsteps that shook the very foundations of Quintanis. Titangent-class war machine. Cassius identified his enhanced hearing, passing the acoustic signature with professional precision. Reaver-class, possibly warlord. Someone has decided that this facility represents a threat worth sterilizing. Chief's tactical assessment was characteristically direct. Time to leave. The evacuation that followed was a masterpiece of coordinated movement. 3 warriors and a scientist navigating ancient passages, while titanic weapons reduced the chamber above them to component atoms. Behind them, the device that had restored humanity's birthright disappeared in a flash of plasma fire, its work complete and its purpose fulfilled. They emerged into Quintanis' dawn light through maintenance shafts that had not been used since the Dark Age's collapse, their armor bearing the scars of a battle that would be remembered long after the participants were dust. Above them, the Titan that had destroyed the facility stood like a metal mountain against the sky, its weapons trained on ruins that no longer posed a threat. "The restoration wave has propagated beyond the Quintana system," Cortana reported, her presence now distributed through communication networks that spanned the sector. Within a standard year, every human within 50 light years will have access to their full genetic potential. Dr. Halsey smiled as she processed the implications, her scientific mind already calculating the changes that would follow. The Imperium will adapt or it will fall, but humanity will survive either outcome. Chief looked across the scarred landscape of Quintanis, where 40,000 souls lived because he had been willing to make hard choices in impossible circumstances. The mission was complete, but new missions would follow as surely as night followed day. "Sergeant," he said, turning to Cases with the respect due to a fellow warrior, "what happens next?" The Ultramarine considered the question with the gravity it deserved, his enhanced intellect processing possibilities that reached across centuries. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of prophecy. "Change," he said simply. "The Imperium will resist it, but change is like gravity. You can fight it for a while, but eventually it wins." In the distance, Imperial forces were beginning their withdrawal, their commanders grappling with reports that defied understanding. Across the sector, similar scenes played out as the Restoration Wave encountered worlds that had forgotten what humanity could achieve when fear did not limit possibility. The Master Chief had come to the 41st millennium as a stranger in a strange land. He would leave it as something far more significant, a catalyst for the changes that would define the next 10,000 years of human history. Whether those changes led to transcendence or catastrophe remained to be seen. But for the first time in millennia, humanity had a choice in the matter.